In 2012, a tragedy unfolded that shocked the world: an arson attack that claimed the lives of 6 innocent children in Derby, England. The devastating fire occurred on May 11, 2012, in a residential street in Osmaston, Derby. What started as an ordinary night for the Philpott family soon turned into a nightmare. While the parents, Mick and Mary Philpott, were downstairs in the house, their children were upstairs, sleeping. The fire, which was deliberately set using petrol underneath the letterbox, spread quickly, trapping the children inside. The children Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jaden were all killed in the fire, with their half-brother Duane passing away in the hospital 2 days later. The community was devastated by the loss. Initially, Mick Philpott was hailed as a father trying to save his children, but soon it became clear that the fire had been deliberately started. The police investigation led to shocking revelations, and Mick, his wife Mairead, and their associate Paul Mosley were arrested and later convicted. The case became one of the most infamous examples of arson in recent history, with the tragic loss of 6 lives at its core. Today, we delve into the details of this horrifying event and the aftermath that left the community and the world questioning the truth behind it. On May 11, 2012, a devastating fire broke out in a house on Victory Road in Derby, leaving 6 children dead. This tragedy would soon become a national story, not just for the horrific loss of young lives, but for the shocking truth that the fire was intentionally set by the children's father, Mick Philpott. His plan? To frame his ex-girlfriend, who had recently left him and was in a new relationship. Mick Philpott, along with his wife Mairead, escaped the flames, but their children tragically did not. The fire was deliberately started in the early hours of the morning, with Mick setting it to appear as an accidental fire that would burn down the house. The children's bedrooms were directly in the line of fire, and despite the efforts of firemen, none of them survived. What raised even more suspicion was Mick Philpott's behavior after the fire. Instead of showing grief and remorse, he appeared unnervingly calm during a press conference. His performance, which included claiming that the fire was a random act, immediately struck many as odd, with experts even suggesting that his reaction was more focused on deflecting blame than on mourning his children. This strange and cold demeanor triggered a police investigation. As the evidence mounted, it became clear that Mick Philpott had not only planned the fire, but had also manipulated people in his life to cover up his crime. The truth came to light when forensic evidence revealed the use of an accelerant, and Mick was arrested. The fire that claimed the lives of 6 children was a calculated act driven by a twisted desire for revenge, and it left the country in shock. This case remains a chilling example of betrayal and manipulation, and it serves as a reminder of how far some individuals will go to settle personal scores, regardless of the consequences. Mick Philpott's dark and twisted plan wasn't just about setting a fire. His crime was fueled by a need to regain control of his life, particularly over his children, and to exact revenge on his ex-girlfriend Lisa Willis, who had left him. But this wasn't just a sudden outburst. It was the culmination of years of manipulation, jealousy, and control. Philpott's relationship with Lisa had unraveled by early 2012, and he was consumed by rage and desperation. Lisa had fled the house with their children, leaving him behind. This challenge to his authority, his control over the women in his life, and his home was something Mick could not tolerate. He wanted to punish her, and he saw a twisted opportunity in the chaos. His goal: to frame Lisa for the fire, making her appear responsible for the tragic deaths of their children. Philpott's reasoning was even more chilling. He hoped to win full custody of the children he so callously manipulated. By playing the hero in the aftermath of the fire, pretending to be the grieving father, he believed he could gain public sympathy and present himself as the ideal parent to take care of his surviving children. What Philpott failed to account for, however, was that his plan was not foolproof. The fire spread too quickly, and the children tragically died, with none of the anticipated outcomes playing out in his favor. This gruesome act wasn't just about anger at his ex-girlfriend. It was a reflection of his warped sense of entitlement and control over everyone in his life, including the children he claimed to love. After the devastating fire that took the lives of 6 children, the police were under immense pressure to solve the case. What followed was a chilling investigation into the people closest to the children, Mick and Mary Philpott. From the outset, Mick Philpott's behavior raised suspicions. He appeared at a press conference following the tragedy, visibly emotional, but his actions seemed strangely inconsistent. While he tearfully spoke about the loss of his children, his body language and the way he spoke made police officers question whether he was genuinely grieving. He seemed almost too theatrical, too rehearsed in his reaction. What you might not expect is that while Mick was out front pleading for justice, he was actually hiding the truth from the world. This dissonance between his public grief and private actions triggered a thorough investigation. The police began to scrutinize his background and soon discovered a deeply disturbing history of manipulation and violence. Mick had tried to frame his ex-girlfriend Lisa Willis by setting the fire to gain custody of his children. This was no ordinary family dispute. It was a calculated and cruel plan. As the investigation unfolded, the police uncovered shocking details. Mick's accomplice, Mariad, who had been living with Mick in a chaotic, turbulent household, was equally involved. She had been living a dual life, both as a mother and as a conspirator in this tragic crime. The couple, along with their friend Paul Mosley, had conspired together in the plot to set the fire, with the intent to blame it on Lisa. They hoped to regain custody of the children by making her appear negligent or worse. In the trial, Mick's past came to light. He was a man with a violent temper, a history of controlling and manipulating those around him. It became clear that his motives were driven by revenge, but also by an insatiable desire for control. Evidence presented at trial painted a grim picture of a man willing to go to extreme lengths for what he wanted. His role in orchestrating this horrendous event was no accident. It was calculated, planned, and executed in a way that showed how dangerous he truly was. The trial concluded with a conviction for both Mick and Mary Philpott, as well as Paul Mosley. Mick Philpott was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 15 years. His actions shocked the nation and left many wondering how someone could be capable of such cold-bloodedness. But as we dig deeper into this case, there's something truly unsettling. What do you think motivated him so strongly? How far would you go for revenge? In 2013, Mick Philpott was sentenced to life imprisonment, while Mary Philpott received a 17-year sentence for their involvement in the tragic deaths of 6 children in a house fire. The case shocked the nation, and the public's reaction has remained intense, with ongoing discussions about the fairness of the sentences and the details surrounding Mary's early release in 2020. Mick Philpott's sentence was a clear indication of the severity of his crime. Life imprisonment, though not automatic, is often given in cases of such a nature where multiple lives are lost. Mick, the mastermind behind the fire, orchestrated the arson that led to the deaths of his 6 children. The court deemed his actions premeditated, cold-blooded, and wholly inexcusable. While serving his sentence, he remains a deeply controversial figure in the UK, seen by many as a symbol of extreme selfishness and cruelty. Mary Philpott, who was complicit in the crime, received a 17-year sentence for her role. However, her sentence has been a point of contention. Many believed her punishment was lenient compared to her husband's, especially considering the grave nature of the crime. Over the years, the question of whether Mary's release after serving less than half of her sentence was justified sparked fierce debates. In 2020, Mary was released on parole, despite objections from the public and victims' families. The decision was highly controversial, with many questioning the rationale behind her early release. Some argued that she showed remorse for her actions, while others felt that her sentence should have been served in full, given the gravity of the crime. Maiden's early release continues to be a topic of heated debate. The decision has ignited discussions about the fairness of the justice system, especially when it comes to parole decisions. Critics argue that the release sends the wrong message to those who commit heinous crimes. Supporters, on the other hand, claim that rehabilitation and remorse can justify early release, even for such a severe crime. The Philpott case remains one of the most discussed in the UK, not only for the horrific loss of life, but for the enduring questions about justice and rehabilitation in cases involving extreme violence. The tragic story of Mick and Mick Philpott's deliberate plan to murder their 6 children is one of the most heart-wrenching and devastating crimes in recent British history. This was not just a case of reckless actions. It was a twisted, selfish scheme that ended with the death of 6 innocent children, whose only crime was being asleep in their beds. Mick Philpott's manipulative plan, intended to secure a larger council house by burning down the family home, led to an unimaginable loss. Mick Philpott, alongside her husband Mick and accomplice Paul Mosley, carried out this horrific act in May 2012. Their plan, which was to create the illusion of a tragedy where they would rescue the children from the fire, went disastrously wrong. Instead of saving their children, they ended up condemning them to a painful death from smoke inhalation. Duane, Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jaden were all victims of a crime so heinous that it left the nation in shock and disbelief. The fact that Mick Philpott was released from prison in 2020 after serving just 8.5 years for her part in this horrific act has sparked public outrage. The early release has stirred intense debate about the justice system and whether it truly serves the victims of such monstrous acts. Mick Philpott, still serving a life sentence, was described by the judge as having orchestrated a wicked and dangerous plan, and his actions continue to reverberate through the lives of those affected. The consequences of Mick and Mick Philpott's actions extend far beyond the immediate tragedy. This crime forced a deeper conversation about the way society responds to dangerous manipulation, family dynamics, and the protection of vulnerable children. The lives lost that night are irreplaceable, and while justice has been meted out, the scars left by this tragedy are indelible. Reflecting on the case, it is evident that this crime is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of selfishness and deceit. 6 innocent children lost their lives because of a plan born out of greed and desperation. This tragic event has left a permanent mark on the local community and, indeed, on the entire nation. It compels us to think deeply about the lengths to which some individuals are willing to go for personal gain, even at the cost of the most precious lives. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos on real-life cases that leave a lasting impact. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue telling these stories that matter.